Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I've really enjoyed that conversation with Jeff Duncan. And now I want to move over to my next guest, Michael Borkey, who's a producer for SportsTalk Mississippi. He's also a host there. And someone I've actually been looking forward to spending some time with. How you doing, Michael?
Man, I'm doing really well.
Yeah, you know this well, too. But during the breaks is when you get a chance to kind of chat. And, it's always interesting to hear my guests get to know each other better. But you and Jeff Duncan had an immediate connection, didn't you?
Yeah, it's funny. So I am a Saints and Pelicans fan, but I'm not from Mississippi or Louisiana. I grew up in upstate South Carolina and went to school at Ole Miss. That's what brought me to Mississippi. But I didn't have a pro sports team. Where I grew up was halfway in between Charlotte and Atlanta, basically. And I didn't really care for either the Panthers or the Falcons. Really didn't like the Falcons. So I guess Saints fandom was just ingrained in me, as it turns out. But moved to Mississippi, went to college, got the job here with SuperTalk in Jackson. And my first apartment, I got an apartment that I couldn't afford. And so I just had the basic cable package that came with my lease. And I couldn't watch any other NFL games on Sunday besides the Saints. And it came with Fox Sports New Orleans. So I got the Pelicans. And I just decided in that moment, I mean, I love New Orleans. I had been a dozen or so times in college. I love this city. And I don't have any pro sports teams. Forget it. I'm just going to be a Saints and a Pelicans fan now. It's the worst how did you become a fan story of all time. Like, I didn't have that moment when I was 7 where my dad took me to the Dome and, Joe Horton threw me his headband or whatever. I didn't have any of that. It's just an apartment I couldn't afford gave me a cable package. And so I just kind of decided to adopt them from there. But I go to a Saints game a year and multiple Pelicans games a year. And I've loved it. And so getting to talk to Jeff about that was funny because, I grew up in the upstate where Zion is from. And so the 6 degrees of separation, if you have ties, I know we're not talking about Mississippi, but I swear if you have ties to Mississippi in any way, the 6 degrees of separation becomes 2. And so you introduced me to Jeff Duncan, and in a second, it's like, hey, you covered Zion, and I got to go see Zion play in high school, and now here we are talking to each other. It's tiny.
Yeah,
world.
It's really amazing. You grew up in South Carolina, huh?
Greenville, South Carolina. Went to Malden High School, technically. So I say Greenville. I grew up in Malden, which is like saying to somebody from out of state, I'm from Jackson, when really you live in Ridgeland. It's just that's the central location. I went to Malden High School, and our claim to fame is the guy from the Make 7 Up Yours commercials. He went to my high school, so that's all we got. It's him and me, I guess. I mean, that's all we've produced since then. So not particularly good.
Well, Sun Herald, the newspaper in Biloxi, was part of a company called Knight Ridder for many, many years, and then they merged with a company called McClatchy. But anyway, I spent time in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head, and then of course up in North Carolina, we owned Raleigh and Charlotte. Spent a lot of time in Charlotte. But it's a great part of the country. You get to go home very often.
I do, and gonna do that for Christmas, of course, because all of my family, everybody is still back that way. So I'm looking forward to that. But I mean, Mississippi's my home now, right? I've been here for 14 years, or about to be 14 years. I moved here in the fall of 2010, so it's been that long. I was educated here, and my son was born here. So I mean, I'm a Mississippian through and through now, and I'm not going anywhere. So as much as South Carolina is home for me, this is actually home now.
Well, Michael,
I'm proud of that.
Yeah, we're very, very lucky to work with SuperTalk Mississippi Media. I had retired in 2016. Didn't plan to work again, and I was kind of enjoying retirement. Steve and Kim reached out to me. I took several months to think about it, so I joined this company. And the more, I didn't know. I knew, obviously, from a competitive point of view, I knew how to go up against radio and sell digital and print and whatever. But I didn't know a whole lot about radio until I joined this company. And what I've gotten to know about what Steve has built, what Kim has been part of, what you guys are part of, what I'm now part of, is that they've built this incredible multimedia company while other radio companies are selling out and going to more national approaches, and the locals gone and all of that. Steve decided to take a totally different approach, and what he built with the 12 stations of SuperTalk, and then the other 14 stations, and then with the SuperTalk News Network that goes to over 51 stations in the state. Man, we are lucky to be with a guy who is innovative and focused on how he can help develop a foundation for media coverage that enables us to not only cover the state, but also make a contribution back to the state. We Absolutely. Are lucky to be at this company, aren't we?
Oh, we are. And especially when you look, as you mentioned, you look around and what big market radio and media is doing now. There was a story a while ago that a sports station in Detroit decided to fold all of their local programming, and they were airing national shows, but because of the company that owned the station, they were getting their news updates during the break from Philadelphia. So you had a Detroit sports radio station getting updates about the Eagles and the Flyers and the Phillies. It's how do you ever think that that's going to work? And so, I mean, it takes more investment to cover local this. You have to spend more, but I mean, you're going to develop a loyal audience. I mean, it's unbelievable the volume of people that listen to our show and have, I mean, since before I joined. So we're talking 8 years ago. I've been with the show, I think, for 8 years, and people have been there since before I got on for sure. But I mean, there are people that remember, I mean, things like my hairstyle. And I told a story about the time where I was fishing at my apartment. I had a crush on a girl that lived in my apartment complex, but I was too much of a wuss to talk to her. And this is 8 years ago we're talking about. And I'm fishing at the pond in our apartment complex, and there were alligators that lived in the pond. And one, of course, she's driving by on the way out. One comes up out of the water, like 20 feet from me. He wasn't attacking me. He was just coming up out of the water. And it scared me so much, I fell backwards and flailed my arms. And she saw me doing that and laughed at me. And that was the only interaction I ever had with this girl. So I'm telling the story on the air. People still bring that up 8 years later. And so the loyalty that local people in Mississippi will give to you by just giving them their due, it's unbelievable. And so the investment is a lot, but the return on that investment is loyalty and honor from the people that live in your backyard.
Hey, but Michael, the thing that I came to appreciate as a newspaper publisher is that the key to success was local. People care about things that are near them. They care about governments that are near them. They care about politics that are near. They care about what's going on in their neighborhood. They care about the sports that are taking place in the sphere that they're interested in. It's one of the reasons why I think Sports Talk has been so darn successful. You guys, you knock it out of the park all the time, but what makes it's just like with the conversation we're having with Jeff Duncan a few minutes ago. What makes you guys so good? It's not that you have an opinion about everything. It's that you're doing your homework and you got incredible sources. So you're in touch with people. Why do you think the podcasts have so many downloads? I mean, people pay attention to this. So we're a very important radio company that has developed a foundation that people engage with. But it's a radio company that's become a multimedia company now, both with SuperTalk TV and YouTube and Facebook and your favorite podcasts and all the things that lay on top of that, hitting on all these different cylinders. When you can deliver the local in the way that we do, it almost guarantees success. And what's happened is every other company is going away from that. And I don't think that's a good place to be. I think where we are is the place to be. And I would say power to Steve and Kim and the team at SuperTalk and you guys for the work that you do to make yourselves relevant, because if you're not relevant, man, people aren't going to remember that story you told.
No. And I love that story. Kind of. I love that. It's kind of an embarrassing story on my end. But, yeah, they're always here. And especially – and it's been through it all, right? I mean, we had a football season where Mississippi State underachieved and fired their coach, and Ole Miss was really good. And so people tuned into that. But we've had years where both teams were remarkably underwhelming. I mean, you think back to – 2019, for example, not a great year for college football here in Mississippi, but the people were there and they're always going to be there. I mean, of course there's ebbs and flows as the teams are good. We get more of the casual listener, but our core audience has never left. And I mean, we've been through changes. We welcomed on Hey Dad years after I joined, and the audience is still there. And so we've been through changes with lineup, and we've changed format, and we've changed how we engage the audience. What we got away from phone calls and just use the text line, and through all these changes, it's still there's one constant, and it's the people.
Well, look, when you have a beloved coach at Mississippi State who dies, just unexpectedly, the way that happened, and you see the change that has erupted since then, and all these twists. Man, people trust us. They trust us to come to this to you guys to get the latest, and because, man, it's heartfelt. I mean, especially when you think about the chapters that Mississippi State has been through. Hey, when we come back on the other side, I'll give you an opportunity to actually respond to that. And then we'll talk about the Peach Bowl. What an exciting game that's going to be for Ole Miss. I know that everyone is super excited about it. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about the strength of sports talk here on SuperTalk Mississippi Media. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have my friend Michael Borkey, who's a producer at SportsTalk Mississippi and also a host. You know his voice well. I'm intrigued by him because, first of all, he's good at what he does. He's got a great voice. He's super enthusiastic about it, but so are his compatriots on Sport Talk. But, you heard what I said a few minutes ago, Michael, about following the ebb and flows of the pain of Mississippi State and what they've been through. And we'll come to Ole Miss next. But gosh, man, I mean, people turned to Sports Talk during those difficult moments, didn't they?
Yeah, and it was truly an unfathomable thing. And unprecedented. I mean, so from a coverage standpoint, we've none of us have ever covered anything like that before. I mean, people pass away; it's a tragic fact of life, but not somebody like that at that time doing what they do. And so, from a coverage perspective, it was hard to try to figure out, how to do this and do it the right way because. He had to go to the hospital, and then some time passed, like 2 days passed before the official announcement, and so having to cover it from a media perspective while also realizing the human side of it and the impact. It was a very odd time, and now nobody should feel sorry for us about that, but that was a very odd time to do this because you're talking about a legend. You're talking about somebody that has changed college football forever. People, and not just because he was goofy and fun and was a very interesting guy. I mean, from a football perspective, he changed the sport forever. Mike Leach will always have an impact on college football forever. And I mean that literally. So you're talking about that and the human element and the unprecedented nature, but also, okay, Mississippi State football is going to play in 2023. So they have to act because the balancing all of that was a very difficult thing to do, to try to balance the sensitivity of it while also doing right by honoring somebody that's so impactful by the sport, while also trying to figure out what Mississippi State needs to do next because they needed to act fast with the calendar the way it was. There was so much happening in such a short period of time. And I mean, it's been a year now. It was a year this week. Yeah. And I mean, his impact and legacy on the sport has very obviously not been forgotten at all. And it's just, it's a tragedy.
He was such an interesting guy. And I immersed myself in what you guys had learned about him and your relationships with him and the conversations you've had with him along the way, but how philosophical he was. And I think in his death, people came to really appreciate just the depth of his thinking, his intellectual capacity, and how he was able to use that capacity to, as you well say, change the face of football. I mean, it's really an incredible story. And hopefully Mississippi State arises. Looks like they got themselves a good coach, and we'll have some success going forward. So Ole Miss, Peach Bowl, got a great opponent in Penn State. I mean, it's been a great year for Ole Miss, really.
Absolutely, and it's Penn State's the best of both worlds. If you're going to play in an Access Bowl, I think Penn State was the team that you wanted to play against for multiple reasons. I mean, for example, Oregon's got to play Liberty, and with all due respect to Liberty, that's not an opponent that you get excited about. Liberty's going to be very overmatched in that game. It's just a fact of it. So you avoided having to play Liberty, and you also avoided playing Ohio State. Now, their quarterback's already gone. I understand that. But Ohio State, I believe, is a lot more talented than that of Penn State. But Penn State is a brand, a big brand, and you will get a lot of notoriety if you win the game. So it's a perfect balancing act. You get the big brand, you get the notoriety, you get the big game, but also it's a winnable game. Like, you don't have to play Ohio State. And I know they're also in the SEC, so it wouldn't happen. But, like, you avoided Georgia or somebody like that, and you also avoid Liberty. So it's a nice reward for a really, really good season. The 12-team playoff is coming next year. Ole Miss would have made it. That's what this confirmed, is they would have been one of the 12 teams in the playoff had it been this year. And Ole Miss is number 8, tied for 8th in all of college football and Access Bowl appearances. So it's validation for your program. And, I mean, it's just positive, positive, positive. There is not a single downside to the Peach Bowl whatsoever. And Ole Miss fans are rightly very excited about the game. And on top of that, they're able to return almost all of the players from this year's team going into next year as well. So times are really good in Oxford for football right now.
Well, does Lane Kiffin still surprise you? Because what's happened, we've seen this evolution of the NIL and transfer portal and all that. He was always a good recruiter, but does he surprise you that he's actually playing ball, especially as it continues to ratchet up the expectation?
Yeah, so for all of the stuff that is said about Kiffin when it comes to getting fired on the tarmac, for example, he's got that nickname that everybody knows from his time at Alabama and the tweets and all of those things that come with Lane Kiffin. And you forget that when it comes to football, he's brilliant. And on top of all of that, he has embraced this new era as good as any coach in college football has. And without embracing all of this, as frustrating as it can be for a coach, I imagine, him doing that and having the foresight to do that is why Ole Miss is where they are today, paired with the institutional support, of course.
Yeah, it's exciting. It really is exciting. And congratulations to Ole Miss. Michael, I've enjoyed visiting with you. We got to get together more often. You know, I'm amazed that we haven't been together already, but you have a good holiday, my friend.
You do the same. Thank you. Anytime.
This has been Michael Borkey from the Sports Talk team. Listen, have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday morning.